And here we have the first technical session headed by Dr. Swati Chauhan. Dr. Swati Chauhan is an associate professor in Department of English in Manawar International Institute of Research and Studies at Faridabad, Haryana. She is a MA in English with PhD in English Literature. She is a university topper in her master's degree. She has 18 years of teaching experience in a UG at PG level. She has been selected as a lecturer in government of Government Degree College, Lucknow by Higher Education Commission, Allahabad. She has also worked with the MDU, Rocta and Bareilly. She is a guide. She is guiding many PhD and dissertation. She has written many research papers which are published in many reputed national and international journals. She has presented many research papers in national and international conferences. Also, she has organized many workshops, delivered guest lectures in several colleges and universities. She is a reviewer of the editorial board of SSPS International Journal. And she is an active member of Gandhi Nayak Kalyan Samit affiliated to All Indian Women's Conference, New Delhi, and Counselor of Indian Culture of Dev Sanskrit University Shantikanj, Harivada. She is a member of ELTAL also. And I feel very privileged to invite you and start the first technical section, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shirley, for such a nice introduction and for such kind words. Really, I'm amazed to hear so nice words about me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cape Comorian Trust. Thank you for the organizers of this conference for inviting me to chair this session. So I welcome all the paper presenters in this technical session. We have 4 paper presenters in this session. The one paper is Dr. Sood, Assistant Professor, and the research scholar Afshan Mirza. The title is Gender Revisioning in the Movie Dangal. Then we have another paper presenter, Mohammad Tabish Nawaz. The topic of the paper is A Post-Colonial Study of Self and Other in George Orwell's Animal Farm. The third paper presenter is Neetu A. Nair. The topic of the paper is Living in the World of Alienation, a reading of Peter Handke's select fictional narratives. Then we have Dr. Modi Roshan Kumar and Kadri Nasreen. The title of the paper is Jasmine in the Search of Identity, a Lens of Post-Colonial Diaspora. So I welcome all the paper presenters for presenting their paper. And before taking much time, I would like to invite the first paper presenter, Dr. Sachi Shrood and Afshan Mirza, to present their paper. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Continue.
Okay. Thank you. The title of my paper is Gender Revisioning in Dangal. Gender issue has been a contentious topic throughout the human civilization. Time and again, we see how women are ingrained in the concepts that limit their horizon of exploration, as a result of which they restrain themselves from discovering their true potential. The representation of women since the inception of Hindi cinema, from being submissive and docile to self-assured, assertive, and liberated women, reflects the evolution of the society in context to gender sensitivity. But despite the progressive mindset and empowerment of women, stereotypical notions and identities based on those age-old beliefs still exist in our society. This research paper is going to explore the gender revisioning in movie Dangal. It's truly said that revolution begins within before it gets manifested in the tangible realities. Until and unless one conquers the inner world, it is impossible to conquer the world without. That's what we see in the movie Dangal. This idea is reinforced in one of the dialogues where Mahavir says, दंगल लड़ने से पहले डर से लड़ना पड़ता है मेरी छोरी डर से तो जीत गई है. Through the character of Mahavir, we see that gender equity is not just a matter of external force, but of shifting beliefs and altered mindsets. The idea that women are weaker sex and incompetent for wrestling, which is considered as a phallocentric sport, is subverted and undermined in the movie Dangal, thus recreating a space and voice for women. By going against the wave of the time, Dangal recreates a new structure and a model for the society by challenging the status quo. It is not just a movie, but a strong sentiment that acts as a vehicle for social change, shattering the stereotypical ideas associated with gender. It also transcends the binaries of masculinity and femininity and reached toward a more fluid gender identity. In the first part of the movie, we see how everyone is obsessed with male child in the village. Some suggest Mahavir herbal medicine, while others provide solution by religious ritual and chants, which reflects the deeply rooted gender biases existing in the society. But the reason for Mahavir's obsession to have a son is different from the society he's part of. Being a competent wrestler who was compelled by circumstances to leave the sport, he wishes to fulfill this wish through his son. When her wife delivers fourth girl child, he loses all hopes and says, "गलत मत समझना, गीता और बबीता दोनों बहुत ही प्यारी हैं, मगर मेरा सपना सिर्फ छोरा ही पूरा कर सकता है." But on a fine day, when his elder daughter ends up beating guys who were harassing them, an epiphany befell on Mahavir. His eyes light up with joy and happiness. A shift comes in his attitude after this incident, and he says to his wife, मैं हमेशा ये सोच के रोता रहा कि छोरी होती तो देश के लिए कुश्ती में गोल्ड लाती. ये बात मेरे समझ में ना आए कि गोल्ड तो गोल्ड है, छोरा लावे या छोरी. It is in this very moment we get into the mind of Mahavir. A streak of feminism can be seen. And instead of ridiculing his daughter for acting in an aggressive way, he encourages and embraces this masculine side of their personality, as he sees in it the hidden potential and spark that could make them great in wrestling domain. His action reflects all those progressive mind who gives preference to potential and strength rather than age-old ideas about gender roles. And it is through his action that a paradigm shift occurs not only within but without. Through his bold actions, he is trying to depict how customs and traditions are constructed by phallocentric power structures, and we are the only one who can bring the change. In a state like Haryana, which is known for its skewed sex ratio and highly deteriorating patriarchal conditioning, a man like Mahavir is an embodiment of advanced consciousness, whose far-sighted vision gives him immense strength to fight all those regressive forces that acted as a barrier in the path of his dreams. Mahavir Phogat doesn't try to accomplish simply his dreams, but he's equally concerned about empowering his daughters. He wants them to be competent enough to give a tough fight to anyone, irrespective of the gender. He plays the role of feminist, who invokes that feeling of willpower and determination in his daughter's mind, who otherwise would have settled for average life, confined to domestic chores. And it is reflected in his speech when he says to his wife, पहलवानी तो सिर्फ छोरे करे. When his wife says, पहलवानी तो सिर्फ छोरे करे, and he responds, हमारी छोरियां छोरों से कम हैं क्या? Sarah Alters and Wendy Skiff in their work Essential Concept for Healthy Living defines gender roles as pattern of behavior, attitude, and personality attributes that are traditionally considered in a particular manner to be feminine or masculine. And Dangal breaks this pattern of thoughts that forces a woman to adopt a certain identity where she is compelled to work under the set jurisdiction and gradually losing the ability to resist or assert her voice. As Simone de Beauvoir, a prominent feminist, states, one is not born a woman, rather she becomes one. Mahavir reinforces this viewpoint of Simon through his actions by responding powerfully on being mocked by a man when he brings Gita to Dangal for the first time. The man who considers wrestling to be an unfit sport for women and assumes women's role confined to domestic space. But the way Mahabir responds, दंगल लड़ने से पहले डर से लड़ना पड़ता है. मेरी छोरी डर से तो जीत गई है. Demonstrates an audacious move toward deconstructing, degenerating gender politics. He doesn't only slap the societal viewpoint, but eradicates the rooted fear and inferiority complex from a daughter's psyche. He even sacrifices his job to train her daughter. It is his hard work and determination that builds a strong Gita, which made her to say, "Chori samajh ke mat ladiyo." So isn't just a movie, but a strong emotion, the deep compassion and love of a father toward his daughters, who sees them no lesser than a man, either in potential or capabilities. It is his trust that helps Geeta to rebuild and regain her confidence after consistent defeats. Even the coach tells her, कुछ लोग gold के लिए नहीं बने होते. But Mahavi never stopped trusting her daughter's potential. In fact, it is he who, despite the obstacles, brought her back on track and made her win the Commonwealth match. In a scene before the final match, Mahavir says to Geeta, कल तू जीतेगी तो अकेले नहीं जीतेगी, तेरे साथ लाखों छोरियां जीतेगी, हर वो छोरी जीतेगी जिसे लोगों ने छोरों से कम समझा है. Here we see how Mahavir boosts Geeta's confidence and inspires us to give her best performance by appealing to her emotions and conscience. He tells her that this match is crucial not just for competing with Australian player, but with all the stereotypical ideas and outdated beliefs that consider women as a weaker sex and incompetent for sports like wrestling. Mahavir wife feels worried about her daughter's marriage and asks, "Who is going to marry my girls?" And the way Mahavir responds, it's in a very right perspective and says, मैं अपनी बेटियों को इतना काबिल बनाऊंगा कि छोरे उन्हें देखने नहीं, वो छोरों को देखने जाएंगी. Thus, transcending all the structural voices and barriers that limits women's potential by creating a division based on gender-based identity. At times, the daughters show disgust over their father when he cut off their hairs and restrict their life, but he knows deep within that any sort of distraction will divert them from their goal. Even in his stringent ways, there's hidden compassion. So we can say that sexuality, gender, and sex, which is assumed to be a social construct, is politically textualized and constructed for maintaining the status quo. This phallocentric tendency of the male-dominating society limits the freedom of women to keep a check, or in simple words, to have a control and power over them. But a man like Mahavir shows that a noble vision can surpass any obstacle by the willpower, determination, and passion. In the mainstream cinema, entertainment is most important element, and it doesn't pay much attention to the critical aspect of society, which is mostly demonstrated by parallel or unconventional cinema. But Dangal exhibits both the elements of commercial and critical cinema, thus intensifying the ripple of social change and acting as a reforming agent for the betterment of society. Therefore, we can claim that visual media has been playing a role of active agency in contesting the gender identities and complexity in relation to it, and thus paving a path and acting as a social agency to put forward the possibilities and potential solution for gender complexities. Dangal doesn't only shatter the stereotypical ideas concerning gender, but also construct a new discourse to transform the abstract ideas into concrete form that can eventually lead the society toward empowered actions and positive changes. Though it is based on real life of Mahavir and his daughters, a rural family from Haryana, but ends up becoming an inspiration for millions of girls who are trying to come out of the defined gender roles. It paves a path and displays that despite the challenges, one can achieve one's dream with passion and dedication. Mahavir, despite all reasons to forget his dreams, keep longing, keep on seeking for a miracle. It brings a revolution in his mind first and later in the society. So, Dangal is a far-sighted vision of a man who surmounts all the mountains and fights with all the odds. Yes,
please
ma'am.
keep the time limits in your
Yes,
mind.
ma'am. Ma'am, I'm concluding. This is the conclusion.
Okay.
So, Dangal is a far-sighted vision of a man who surmounts all the mountains and fights with all the odds to manifest his intangible dream into tangible reality. It is a story of compassion, suffering, and determination that ultimately leads to gender revisioning by subverting and undermining the gender stereotypes and thus creating a space for women's voice. In addition to this, it delivers the progressive message that women athletes must be encouraged and supported as strongly as males. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Afshan. It was a nice presentation. We will talk about your paper at the end of the session. So without taking much time, I would like to invite the next paper presenter, Mohammad Tavish Nawaz, to present his paper. The title of the paper is A Postcolonial Study of Self and Other in George Orwell's Animal Farms. Participants, I want to request you, please keep in your mind the time limit. I suppose you have been informed to present your paper, in the main points within 10 minutes so that we can have some time at the end of the session for the open discussion. So please maintain the time limit. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mohammad Tavish Nawaz.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mohammad Tabish Nawaz, and my paper is A Post-Colonial Study of the Self and Other in George Orwell's Animal Farm. Post-colonialism represents the study of exploitation of human beings and how they were controlled through various means by the Western societies. One of the foremost binaries of self and the other, adopted by the colonizers, was the key element in ruling the colonized. They were exploited in terms of dichotomies where one negates the other as well as appears dominant to the other. It is the single greatest tool of discrimination towards the colonized, which is still relevant in parts of colonial countries around the world. Though George Orwell's Animal Farm is mostly associated with the Russian Revolution of 1917, we can see the idea of binaries heavily used by the Napoleon Company to rule the other animals at the farm. George Orwell is the product of imperialism as he was born in the British era of Motihari, India. He had the opportunity He had the opportunity to closely look into the matters of colonial rule while being posted in Burma in his youth. His novel Animal Farm is an allegory and a political satire on the totalitarian state of countries during his time. Therefore, we see the hegemony of self and the other throughout the novel. According to Edward Said, the relationship between the Occident and the Orient is the relationship of power, of domination, of varying degrees of a complex hegemony, where the Occident is the colonizer and the Orient is the colonized. Similarly, the self and the other are represented as the colonizers and the colonized. Napoleon wasn't much of a talker, but had the reputation of getting his way. His aides did most of the work in An Animal Farm. The story focuses on his rational behavior in front of the other, and other behavior in front of the self. At the beginning, after the rebellion, Clover and Boxer accept pigs as their teachers. They absorbed everything that they were told and passed it on to the other animals. The other considers them as their superior in every way and work towards their goal. They go on preaching to the other on the magnanimity of Napoleon and how he is the best leader among them. In the colonial rule, there were news houses that were controlled by the imperialists to control the natives through false information. It was one of the tools to introduce the modern way of governance, and they were mostly refuted by the colonized people. We see the same thing with the squealer, who spreads wrong information to the other animals and react in front of them, revealing that whatever Napoleon was doing is the right choice for all the animals. The very first thing that the pigs reveal after the rebellion is that they have been learning to read and write for the past 3 months. Declaring this particular fact, they announce themselves to be the self. This further creates the binaries of educated and uneducated. Orient is constructed and represented in binary opposition against the Occident. Binaries, as the opposition, are the principle of contrast between two mutually exclusive terms which argues about the binary dichotomy. In the concept of self and the other, the binaries play a very important role. The binaries play a very important role which distinguishes between the two. By declaring themselves the educated ones, they reflect that the pigs are capable of ruling the other animals as the other are the master. The hegemony can be seen very clearly in the novel through few of the characters, and Napoleon and his associates preach the animalism in a much exaggerated manner after the death of Old Major. The marginalized animals do not care to find out. If this rebellion is to happen anywhere, what differences does it make to the whether we work it or not? They are the hegemonic sections of the other whose voice is either marginalized or they refuse to participate in any kind of social interaction. Even if someone is interested, like Molly, they only participate because of the benefits of these things on a personal level. As we can see by the observation of Franz Fanon, the unpreparedness of the educated classes, the lack of practical links, them and the mass of the people, their laziness, and let it be said, their cowardice at the decisive moment of the struggle will give rise to tragic mishaps. The ignorance of other animals makes the self more powerful and invincible. The pigs set aside the harness room for them and use it as their office. They use the building to teach themselves and study blacksmithing, carpenting, and other arts. Snowball forms different committees to place animals based on their work so that they can work easily. The pigs teach almost all animals, making them literate to communicate. In the colonial rule, the colonizers restricted teaching and at the same time opened institutions to spread language and religion. Macaulay, who introduced the current education system in India, observed that the sole purpose of the company was to educate the elite group who will automatically educate the general public. Therefore, the aim of education in India was to anglicize the natives through English education and make black colored Indian English in their way of living, behavior, thought, culture, traditions, and morality. Such persons were likely to serve as the connecting link between the British government and the general public. This helped them to manage their natives accordingly. The dogs that attacked Snowball at the time of deciding on the voting of the windmill were the same puppies that Napoleon had reared them after taking to their mothers. The self, after taking from their mothers. The self or the accident became the master as the other dogs wagged their tails towards him. They wagged in the same manner as the other dogs did to Mr. Jones, proving their loyalty. After the rebellion, only the ruler changed, as the rule of tyranny remained the same throughout. Napoleon mounts on the dais where the old major stood to deliver his speech. The Napoleon, as a self, announces his authority over the other, and no one questions him back. At the time of forming the committee, Napoleon chooses pigs and heads himself. The objective of the self is very clear: to make the other animals quiet in the matter of Snowball. Schuyler makes things up. In tarnishing the character of Snowball, Napoleon becomes the undisputed master of Animal Farm. The idea of supreme leader is presented as if there is no other option in front of the others. In Schuyler's words, the sacrifice Comrade Napoleon has made in taking extra labor upon himself, do not imagine, comrades, that leadership is a pleasure. On the contrary, it is a deep and heavy responsibility. The pigs present the situation of self as if they are doing a great favor to others, appointing themselves as their commander. This is the exploitation of other by the self in the name of reformist mission and transformation. In reality, their enterprise is spearheaded by the opportunist, the pirate, and the merchant. The motive of the pigs running the animal farm is nothing but in terms of luxurious life, food, freedom of their own. As days pass, Napoleon starts changing the commandments according to their benefits. When the pigs move into the farmhouse, they sleep on the same bed, contrary to their own rule of no animal shall sleep in a bed. Somehow, Clover discovers that it was changed to no animals shall sleep in beds with sheets. The self goes on discriminating themselves with the other, reminding them of their position in the hegemony. At the same time, it is also announced that the pigs would get up an hour late in the morning than the other animals. The other animals worked harder than ever to build the windmill. They had to make the wall thrice thick as before. With tremendous effort, they give their time to complete it on the appointed date. Squealer and the other pigs magnify the status of Napoleon by giving him titles and referring to him as our leader, Comrade Napoleon, and the father of all animals, terror of mankind, and protector of sheepfold. The role of news horses during the colonization stresses certain things for the American, others for Italian or the Russian. The role of Squealer is similar to the role of media in colonial times, where they not only exaggerated the part done by the self, but show how they have done things to help the other. They instill a sense of falseness where everything that is done to them is in their favor. The other fails to recognize their treachery and believe their words. Squealer helps in conjuring false evidence to prove Snowball, the ultimate form of other. He is the dangerous rival of Napoleon, and therefore they all prove him to be the main culprit behind the Battle of Cauchy. That to say, they are the nationalists, not treacherous, loves the animal and the farm. Three hens, who are supposedly the supporters of Snowball, are killed after they confess the murder when to plot to kill Napoleon is discovered. The rations are reduced for all the animals except for the pigs and the dogs. The distribution of foods is more towards the category of the self and other, contrary to the decision that was taken after the rebellion. It indicates the binaries were needed to be drawn along with the distinction of the self. It demands respect from the other as they consider themselves more privileged than other. For Edward Said, otherness is a result of a discursive process by which a dominant in group, the self constructs one many odd groups, other by stigmatizing a difference. After a few days, the pig started receiving barley and a beer with half a gallon of for Napoleon himself. The other animals were lured into believing the fact that struggle was necessary and a kind of good thing. The pigs even led to the formation of a military. The life of the other was generally the same throughout the years. They were always hungry, slept on a straw, drank water from the pool, and labored in the fields. In winter, they were haunted by the cold, and in summer, they were troubled by the flies. In a few months, the memories of other animals started vanishing slowly, where they hardly remembered the days before the rebellion. There is nothing that they could have compared their lives with except those list of figures which demonstrated that everything is better and has been improved from before. Only Benjamin remembered that the life of the marginalized or the other will never be better or much worse. That is, hunger, hardship, and disappointment will always be there. When the deputy of neighboring farmer visited the animal farm for inspection, the animals couldn't figure out whether to be more frightened of the pigs or human visitors. They were already informed about the only amendment that changed from all seven amendments to all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Here, others undeniably focused that the self in the context of the novel will always be above the other in every terms and conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabish Nawaz. It was a wonderful presentation, and very points you have mentioned in your presentation that I want to discuss at the end of this session, and I hope other
Thank you.
participants would also like to discuss certain things because you have taken very good content and it was a good research on this animal farm. So now I would like to invite next
Thank you, ma'am.
paper presenter, Neetu A. Nair. The paper is Living in the World of Alienation, a reading of Peter Handke's select fictional narratives. So
Good
kindly
morning,
present.
ma'am. Am
Yeah,
I
good
audible,
morning.
ma'am?
Yeah, sure, you are audible.
Yeah, a very good morning to the respected dignitaries and research scholars of other universities and my dear friends. Today I'm going to present before you the topic or the title and title, Living in the World of Alienation, a reading of Peter Handke's select fictional narratives. Before beginning my paper, I should quote Edmund Muller, who remarks, "Man suffers not only from war, persecutions, famine, and ruin, but he always suffers from inner problems, a conviction of isolation, randomness, meaninglessness in his way of existence." This paper discusses on the state of mind of the main protagonist of Peter Handke's two select fictions, The Repetition in the year 1986 and The Moravian Night in 2016. The characters who underwent mental trauma and delineation from the society. It has been the result of his sense of uprootedness, identity crisis, meaninglessness in the way of his existence. Actually, we all know that man has become a cognitive giant and mind is norm in the society. We all are living in the contemporary society because of the technological advancement and all. We are intellectually giant. And the word alienation means everyone is alienated in some way or other. It is a state of mind, results from the conflict between inner mind of the individual and external world. All people suffer from alienation, especially from religious, physical pleasures, comforts, social relations, social customs, and conventions. These disturbing demands of the mind torture the socialization within the external world. The modern man is rooted away from life and all his hopes and aspirations withered in the way of success. Actually, it feels like an acute terror in the world. Feeling alienation is like an actual terror of the world, because if we are finding any difficulties in expressing our feelings outside, It is like a terror of the world. And about the author Peter Hanke, he's an Austrian novelist, playwright, translator, poet, film director, and screenplay writer. Awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 2019. The Hornet is the first novel. Offending the Audience is the first play, and The Left-Handed Woman is his first film. Actually, he had written novels, plays, and film in German language, and the translated form was I have been taken. I'm going to my paper. The paper aims to bring forth Peter Hanke's concept of alienation in two novels, namely The Repetition and The Moravian Nights. The main protagonists of the novels play a role of respectful heroes who struggles hard to escape from the walls of self-rootedness, feeling of insecurity, uprootedness, cultural marginalization, and homelessness. But finally, they survive from the clutches of detachment and graveyard of loneliness. Both the characters reveal the tragic separation of mind and the society. The novels offer a picture of absurdity on a heap of senseless struggle of man's existence. Alienation is a part of existential theory. This main condition faced by individuals of modern society is of self-alienation and estrangement. The one thing I find awkwardness in most of the novels of Peter Hanke is that most of his narrators are nameless narrators. And he hadn't given any name to the narrators, but for a repetition, he had given the name to the main protagonist. But the next novel, The Moravian Nights, he hadn't given the name. But to my opinion, by using the nameless character, the author prevent the readers from unconsciously attaching the identity of this person. That is, we cannot accessible, the readers cannot accessible to the character. So if a name is given to the character, it could have been better. And The Repetition, going to the first novel, Repetition, in the year 1986 by the Austrian writer Peter Hanke, narrates the story of Philip Kobold, who is an Austrian of mixed German and Slovenian heritage. It is a novel about disoriented self, identity crisis, and homelessness in one's own world. Philip Kobold's journey from his home in Carinthia to Slovenia on the trial of his missing brother, Grigor, is a story around the novel. Actually, this search for the self is compensating with the search for his own brother. His family background makes a big impact on him. At the end, Philip convinces that he just wants to narrate his own story rather than searching his brother. The circumstances of his life are the result of his estrangement and feeling of detachment. The theme of alienation shapes the character of the main protagonist, Philip. A mental trauma is seen in all the characters of the novel because of the cultural marginalization, because both the parents are from different cultures, and the childhood experiences of the narrator and the siblings are really distressing. The school days provoke the narrator in many ways. He experiences homesickness in many of the schools and all. Cultural marginality affects a family socially and mentally and ended up in despair and alienation. His father is a Slovenian and marries an Austrian woman. This difference of cultures makes each member of the family think differently. Homelessness and uprootedness is the main theme of the novel. The narrator's family legend is rooted in a historical event. It seems that they are really descended from Grigor, the prime mover of the Dolmen peasant revolt. The story is that after his execution, his descendants are driven out of the Azano Valley. Every firstborn male is baptized with the name of Grigor. After execution, his family has been banished and becomes homeless. This affects the narrator in his childhood very, very much way. The ability to remember the past forms a basis of who we are, makes one aware of our own self, and it makes life. Memory plays a vital important in both two novels because past experiences create memory. According to me, memory guides man in his actions in one's own life. One's experiences becomes memory. Repetition is a promise of a son's aspiration of bringing up a family to reputed heights. The journey of the novel is an attempt to follow the footsteps of his older brother, Grigor. Towards the end of the novel, Grigor speaks of the legendary country called the Ninth Country. Philip Kobold resembles with snake skin, very important phrase which Peter Hanke had used, that he comes across on the wanderings in the last part of the novel. It actually symbolizes a past, the lost parts of oneself, trying to understand former selves by describing the discarded skins left on the path. The change of focus of old personal memories intermingles with the present, gives the novel a different perspectives of happenings. The lost members of the family, like the skin of the snake. The skin of the snake is symbolizes with the lost members of the family. Here, the lost member is his brother Grigor and represents a snake without disclosing its later whereabouts. The novel ends up with a religious perspective. It marks a good impression on everyone who reads it. It ends up with a prayer. So, going to the next novel, The Moravian Night, 2016, who, by the Austrian writer Peter Hanke, tells a story of a retired writer who talks about a recent journey in a houseboat. The theme of alienation is incorporated with memory, which struggles in the world of reality. Moravian Night is a whole houseboat. The novel tracks the fears, anxieties, angers, and pleasures of life experienced by the author. It is a searching exploration of how travel and storytelling can help us find our real self. It is a floating hotel which narrates a journey in a houseboat on the Morava River with a few friends, associates, and collaborators of a former writer. Here, the writer is given many names, nameless writer, former writers, like that. It includes a long journey to a graveyard by bus. This includes places violated during the Balkan Wars, anti-noise conference in Spain, cross-country hike along some abandoned rail lines and on the outskirts of the Austrian city. The novel addresses the uneasiness about Austria, need for solitude, desire for peace both personally and globally. For searching for his identity to get some solace, the nameless narrator, travels a lot. Next. The author's wanderings include Shades of Macabre, a cemetery, acquaintance with a young girl with whom he had an affair, a symposium, hiking with a Galician poet. Finally, meeting his brother at his ancestral home symbolizes an alienated self within. The author's memory on his stay back in an island in the Adriatic Sea, which he called Sanity, gives a glimpse of life of isolation. His only interaction is with the fisherman. He travels to Spain, Galicia, and then to Germany. He badly remembering his father and wants to find his roots, but his visit do not help.
Neetu ji, kindly adhere the time limit.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, I'll finish too. The mental trauma, along with alienation, is a result of war. And this reminds the narrator the tomb of the missing father. Human beings appear to him almost exclusively in the form of the disturbed or the confused. So both the novels end up with the conclusion that the paper brings forth the journey of two writers in the way, one way or the other alike. The physical body seems to be different, but their wandering of their mind makes the readers think that life is a challenge. Peter Hanke probes deep into the unusual exploration of mind, which sometimes feels like an biography. One takes him the mind of other alienated selves and reproduced with a highlighted emotional sense. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Neetu Nayak. It was a very good study, I would say, a very deep study. We will discuss about it at the end of the session. So now I want to call the next participant, the paper presenter of this session, Dr. Murvi Roshan Kumar with Kadri Nasreen. The title of the paper is Jasmine in the Search of Identity, a Lens of Postcolonial Diaspora. So,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. First of all, good morning, everyone. I would like to thanks to Capcom Marine Trust and organization for giving me this opportunity. I would like to share my screen.
Nasreen ji, it's a kind request. Please present your study only, what the study you have presented through this paper.
Okay, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. So this is my third collaborative work with Dr. Morve Roshan, and the title of the paper is Jasmine in the Search of Identity, a Lens of Post-Colonial Diaspora. As we know, the term diaspora means generally to scatter or dispersal and refer to the dispersal of Jews, but now it become an umbrella term and it includes all type of migration and immigration In diaspora literature and study, identity plays a very important role, and there are different types of identity, such as national identity, ethnic identity, and so on. In Jasmine novel written by Bharati Mukherjee, the protagonist depicts a novel, the experience of her migration and her transformation from a normal, ordinary village girl to an independent woman. Now let's go to diaspora and post-colonial theory. As we know that diaspora means scatter, and now it includes all kind of exile, expatriates, and everything. What is post-colonial? To understand post-colonial, we should know about what is the colonial. So what is the colonial? In the 19th century, the Europeans and specifically British and French colonies were spread all over the world as a colonizer, and they wanted to expand and prosperous their colonies and dominate other countries. And what is post-colonialism? At the term refers that it is the period of after colonialism. In that period, post-colonialism, the colonized took their proper place by gaining freedom, thus overcoming the political and cultural imperialism. And to describe this relationship of colonizer and colonized, there are many terms being used, such as marginality, subaltern, hybridity, expatriate, multiculturalism, mimicry, and the other. And the most notable post-colonial critics and scholars are Edward Said, Gayatri Spivak, and Homi K. Bhabha. Here it is a short introduction of Bharati Mukherjee. She was a renowned Indo-Canadian author, and she migrated from India to Canada and became US citizen in 1989. And she wrote many short stories and fiction as well. In her novel Jasmine, she writes the experience of migrants and examines the internal cultural conflicts of her migrant characters. Now, our research paper mostly focus on Homi K. Bhabha and his theory of hybridity or hybrid identity. Homi Bhabha was the third important critic of post-colonial criticism, and he was influenced by the great French thinker Jacques Lacan. He has contributed to post-colonial criticism by usage of such terms as mimicry, you can also call it as imitation, hybridity, and the other. Hybridity was one of the most commonly used terms in post-colonial, and Homi Bhabha it was popularized by Homi Bhabha. Hybridity emerges from the colonial encounter, which creates new cultural forms and identities. And Bharati Mukherjee's novel is the best example of this hybridity and experience of migrants. Now it's about Jasmine, a novel. Jyoti, the main protagonist of the novel, she was born and brought up in post-colonial Indian village Hasnapur. When she was only 7 years old, an astrologer predicted widowhood and her exile, but she did not believe it at that time. Then Jyoti married to her brother's friend Prakash. Prakash was liberal and very open-minded person, not like other male in post-colonial era. Prakash wanted to go to the USA with his wife and work there. He changes her name from Jyoti to Jasmine, but unfortunately Prakash killed in bomb blast, and Jasmine decides to complete his husband's mission. But Jasmine's journey from India to the USA has not been smooth and easy. She faced many obstacles, hardship, and the worst experience of her life, rape. Jasmine entered America illegally, and when she reached America on the first day, she was raped by half-face. Then she met Lillian Gordon, an American lady. This Lillian teaches Jasmine American way of life and call her Jay-Z. And here we can see the hybridity, how Jasmine transformed herself from a simple Indian girl to American woman. Jasmine tries to imitate American language, lifestyle, and culture. Then Jasmine works as a housekeeper for Wiley and Taylor's adopted son Duff. Here Jasmine falls in love with Taylor's generous and kind personality. Jasmine returns to Iowa, where Bud gives her new name Jen, which is near completion of her Americanization. And in the end, Jasmine decides to live with Taylor and Duff, and this shows Jasmine becomes an independent woman. Now she takes her decision independently, and she knows what she wants and what is her identity. Now here there are some quotations from a novel Jasmine. In the first quotation, we can see that Jasmine is really confused about her identity, why in the host country she really confused and feels loneliness and alienation. In the next quotation, we can see Jasmine becomes a brave girl. She attacks on half face and murdered him to save herself. In the third quotation, she looked herself in the mirror when she wear jeans and t-shirt, and she really shocked by seeing that she really changed and transformed into an American woman. Next, when Jasmine went to live with Vadhera, Professor Vadhera, but there she felt she again live into India, and she did not want to live in India again, where everyone looks at her as a young widow. Next, when Jasmine lives with Taylor and Vedi, she falls in love with Taylor's generous and kind personality. And last, finally, Jasmine goes with Taylor with the hope of new future, a new identity, and better life. To conclude, Jasmine, a novel, describes the experience of migrants. Through the novel, Bharati Mukherjee describes the life of a widow and difficulties of a woman in post-colonial period. Homi Bhabha's theory of hybridity and mimicry we can understand through the journey of Jasmine. Jasmine represents how a woman can be transforms herself from a village girl to an independent woman. And these are the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasreen. It was a good presentation, and you have
Thank you, ma'am.
presented very well a good study of identity crisis in the novel of Mukherjee. Okay, so now I feel that we should discuss here in an open platform. So if any one of you is having any query or any observation regarding the paper of in the research paper of these paper presenters, so we can discuss here. Yeah, Nasreen, do you have something to say? I can see one raised hand.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any observation from anyone's side? Okay, since I'm not finding any observation or any query from any participant, any paper presenter, so here I'm going to conclude this session. So, uh, listening the studies of all four paper presenters, first of all, I would like to talk about the paper presented by Afshan Mirza. The title was Gender Revisiting in the Movie Dangal. It was a nice study. It was a deep study about this movie in the term of post-colonial literature, that how the identity was changed and transformed from a simple girl to an athlete. It was a wonderful presentation. Yes, the gender revolution was presented through this movie, that earlier in the Dangal, in the Kushti, only boys were supposed to take part, but how this character Mahavir brought his daughters in this field, and they performed so well. Not only they performed well, but they brought the gold medal also. So many dialogues from the real movie is taken by Afshan Mirza. So, and the presentation presented like women are always considered meek, gentle, delicate, submissive, obedient type of. But the picture has changed now, and the condition and transformation has come in the treatment of women and the girls. So the paper presented this study, that now the scenario has been changed, and this change has been brought by the parents of the girl child, that they do not want to make their girl child a meek, a delicate and a submissive lady, but they want to make them a very competitive type of girl. So that is presented by the Afshan Mirza's paper that was based on the movie Dangal. Coming towards the another paper, it was presented by Muhammad Tavish Nawaz, and the paper was a postcolonial study of self and other in George Orwell's Animal Farm. This is a very famous allegory, satirical allegory, and the allegory is presenting the real picture of post-colonialism, that how the struggle was there, how the people struggle for their identity, for their rights, and if there was no struggle, then there was no change in their life, in their in the system. So how these pigs brought a change in their lifestyle, in the system of their animal farm, and how they led another type of life. So this paper is presenting this true picture of the time, and this is a very good study, I would say. Now coming towards the another paper, it was presented by Neetu A. Nair. The topic was Living in the World of Alienation, a rating of Peter Hanke's select fiction narrative. Neetuji, here I have one observation. The title you have taken a reading of Peter Hanke's select fictional narratives. I feel the better word would be here selected fictional narratives. What do you feel?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'll change it, ma'am.
Yeah, this is incomplete type of, always the selected works of one writer, or the selected poems, or the selected novels. So I feel it should be
Okay, ma'am. Sure,
rephrased.
sure.
That was my one of the
Thank you,
observations.
ma'am.
Another, yeah, thank you. Another thing, the term alienation, which is a major and the most important aspect of the post-colonial literature. It is discussed by Neetu A. Nair, and searching of oneself. It is a very important part of post-colonial literature. She has taken very relevant symbols which are presenting here the alienation, the loss of identity. So it was a good study of post-colonial aspects and the theme. Coming towards the last paper that was presented by Kadri Nasreen, the title was Jasmine in the Search of Identity, a Lens of Post-Colonial Diaspora. The transformation that the paper was presenting, that the transformation of a simple, meek, submissive village girl into a modern city girl. And she has taken the theory of hybridity, which is depicting the identity of that girl, how she has changed her identity. The one time she was a simple girl, she got married, but now she changed herself, she transformed herself into a city girl, into a USA citizen, and then how she fulfilled the dream, the mission of her husband. Though the struggle was not simple, though the journey was not simple, but how she faced the buffets of life, and how she faced the grim realities of life, like she has been raped even. So how she faced all these things, and then she fulfilled the mission and the motive of her husband's life. So this was a wonderful study. This is my conclusion. All paper presenters have presented very well and presented their good studies of the paper. So here I would like to congratulate all the paper presenters for bringing a new study from their work. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cape Comorian Trust and the organizers of this conference, for inviting me and for giving me this opportunity to chair this session. Thank you so much. Over to you, the moderator.